My name is Bond.
James Bond.
James Bond.
My name is Bond. James Bond.
Look what the cat dragged in.
Well, that's a neat trick.
Curious how everyone who touches those diamonds seems to die.
You handle those cubes like a monkey handles coconuts.
Good evening, 007.
Welcome to hell, Blofeld.
A worldwide manhunt brings secret agent James Bond face to face with his arch enemy Ernst Stavro Blofeld. A struggle ensues and James Bond gets the better of Blofeld once and for all. With Blofeld out of the way, James Bond is sent to investigate a diamond smuggling operation whose operatives are being killed off one by the treacherous Winton Kid. James Bond assumes the identity of diamond smuggler Peter Franks and is sent to Amsterdam where he meets his contact, the lovely Tiffany Case. When the real Peter Franks shows up, Bond takes him out and seizes the opportunity to use Frank's body to smuggle the diamonds to the U.S. Upon arrival, James Bond is met by some goons who take him to Slumber Mortuary. James Bond is captured but barely escapes death by cremation when they realize that Bond had swapped out the genuine diamonds and replaced them with phonies. James Bond then heads to Las Vegas, where he plays a little craps and meets up with the beautiful Plenty O'Toole. But their rendezvous is cut short when the goons show up to excuse Plenty O'Toole, leaving Bond in the capable hands of Tiffany Case. James Bond, along with the American CIA, plan to give Tiffany the real diamond so they can track her, but Tiffany gives them the slip. But James Bond catches up with Tiffany at her home, but unfortunately for Plenty O'Toole, she got there first. When Tiffany realizes that she's next in line to get bumped off, she joins forces with James Bond and they hatch a new plan. The bad guys get their hands on the real diamonds, and Tiffany runs a little distraction, while James Bond gets entrance to White Tektronix, where he uncovers that the diamonds are being put to a very peculiar use. And upon being exposed, James Bond has to escape by moon buggy. When James Bond returns to Las Vegas, it's a chase of another kind, where James Bond has to outrun a few local sheriffs using a little creative driving. Bond and Tiffany arrive back to the hotel, and James Bond uses a little high-flying acrobatics to try to gain access to reclusive billionaire Willard White. But instead of White, James Bond comes face-to-face once again with his arch-enemy Ernst Stavro Blofeld and Ernst Stavro Blofeld. Bond takes out one of the clones, but the real Blofeld is still standing. Bond is captured once more, but again manages to escape. After regrouping, Bond and his team discover the real location of Willard White, where Bond is confronted by the dangerous Bambi and Thumper. After a little roughhousing, Bond locates the real Willard White, while the real Blofeld slips away from the casino, taking Tiffany Case with him, and Blofeld's diamond-powered satellite wreaks havoc on the world. But James Bond and Willard White uncover the real secret location of Blofeld. Bond arrives at an oil rig off the coast of Baja, where he and Tiffany Case struggle desperately to sabotage Blofeld's plan, but the cavalry arrives, taking out Blofeld's base, but leaving Blofeld's fate a mystery. Bond and Tiffany set sail for a little rest and recreation, but come face to face with the treacherous Winton Kid. Bond overcomes the two, and James Bond and Tiffany Case set sail together. Written by Richard Maybaum and Tom Mankiewicz, directed by Guy Hamilton, 1971's Diamonds Are Forever.
And Sean Connery is back as James Bond.
He's back, and we're back.
He's back.
Good evening.
And we're back to what great movies are all about.
Making movies the way they were supposed to
That's
be,
right.
or something or other.
And the way all good movies should be. Not
right.
that other last movie that we did.
Right.
This one is,
Right. Not that classic bit of genius. No, this is where we get it right.
More farcical, with Southern fried comedy. This is kind of an interesting entry in the series for me because they bring Sean Connery. Well, let's back up a little bit. Basically, Broccoli and Saltzman, they send Lazenby in advance for this movie, and then he promptly sends it back to them. So he's out. Lazenby's officially out. And so they do this casting thing, and United Artists wants people like Robert Redford, and I think there's some other names there, like Burt Reynolds. It's like, and they all refused it. They said, they were smart. They were like, James Bond should be British. So, but eventually they cast John Gavin, who had played Spartacus in Kubrick's. No, he didn't play. I'm sorry, he didn't play Spartacus. He was in Spartacus. He was Julius Caesar in Spartacus, in Stanley Kubrick, the Stanley Kubrick film. And he also, probably most notably, he was in Psycho. He played Janet Leigh's boyfriend. But he was officially cast in the role. But United Artists wasn't having it. So I think David Picker at the time, he was the head of the United Artists. He went over and he did this Plenty Sweet deal, and Sean Connery said yes. I think it was like $3 million plus like a 3-picture deal or something. It was really a pretty lucrative deal. And he also got, if they went over budget, he'd get $150,000 for each week that they go over budget. So they got this movie done on time.
Yes, they did.
Which might be to the detriment of the film, because, jumping ahead here, but there's some kind of dodgy stuff going on, especially in the climax.
You think?
Now, come on, this is going to be somebody's favorite.
I don't know. I sort of wonder, like, I think even Bond fans who like this film, I don't think anybody will say it's a good film or it's a great film. I think they all just sort of say, well, Diamonds is Diamonds, but it's fun. It's meant to be fun, it's over the top, it's silly, and that's okay. I really don't think even on a great day, like there's people that say Diamonds is great. It's a classic, and people just don't understand it. Like, I think personally on every level, this movie is awful.
Really?
Well,
I don't share that. I thought, I kind of thought we'd kind of not lock heads, but
right.
have a difference of opinion here, because
Sure.
I'm kind of like in the category where I'm not going to say it's great, but I think it's a good film. It's definitely not as good as the films that have preceded it, not by a long stretch. Mm-hmm. But there's some stuff in here, and we'll get to that. But there's some stuff in here that I really like. There's some other stuff that not so much.
Yeah, listen, and I'm very happy to have like a counterpoint, because again, if the two of us sit here all day just going, it's not very interesting.
We'll save that for a View to a Kill, I guess. I don't know.
Which actually might be another one, but and I should clarify. I should say, look, like there's a infamous quote. James Bond is like Sex and Pizza, where when it's bad, it's still good. When it's good, it's great. But even the bad ones are still good. And I agree with that. I think there is something to be said for every James Bond movie. It is a lot of fun. It is silly. It gives us a lot to talk about. I mean, honestly, it's rich with stuff. I'll say that. And I should also say this too, by the way. The people in it are great. I mean, it's certainly not a slight to anybody in the film. I think Diamonds has some of the best in terms of the cast. For example, Jill St. John. She will always say in every interview that she's glad she did it. She loves it. She loves being part of the Bond family. She loves being a Bond girl. And the ones who complain, she has said they're kind of just sort of bad sports. And I like that. I like that sort of, I like that sort of sense of gratitude for having done it and for being part of the Bond community in general. Supporting cast. I have met Trina Parks. Lovely person. She's terrific.
I got to meet her too. Yeah. That was great.
She's great, and I was very fortunate to spend some time with Lana Wood. I did a very small convention, and at one point, it was for several hours. It was just the two of us, and we got to talk for a long time, and I got to know her, and she could not have been sweeter. I mean, like, super sweet.
I got to meet her briefly as well, and both of them, Trina Parks and Lana Wood, they were terrific people, very personable, friendly, and
absolutely
just terrific.
Yeah, Lana was the type. I mean, honestly, she was there doing autographs, and toward the end of the day, I said, well, okay, time for me to get my autograph. I said, so I went to pick out a photo. I said, would you sign this, please? And I went to pay her, and she says, oh, don't worry about it. And I'm like, no.
That's cool.
She literally tried to give it to me without paying, and I'm like, no. Look, and by the way, it was a super small convention, so it wasn't like any of us were walking away, millionaires after this.
Right.
So honestly, I mean, I had to insist. I said, listen, put it down, boom, thank you. I said, but I mean, again, she like, just for the hours of talking, she felt uncomfortable taking money, and I was like, no, don't be that nice. So yeah, I mean, just over the top sweetheart. So
Really? Both of them, yeah.
So even as I sort of like chisel away at this film, again, I just want to be clear, like it's nothing to do with the wonderful people in it, and again, it is sort of goofy and fun. Having said that, let's get cracking.
Let's get the knives out. You know what's? You're right about the cast in this. I think it's a really interesting cast. You have everything from Bruce Cabot, who is like, he's in the original King Kong from like 1933. So he also was,
right.
Yeah, and he was also a John Wayne regular. He's in a ton of John Wayne movies. But and he brings a lot of cinema history with him. He plays Saxby. He's not in it a whole bunch, but it's still, it's kind of cool.
Yeah, and I agree with that. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention too, my good friend Terry Mountain is also in the pre-titles.
Is he really?
It wasn't until, and I knew he was in this film, I didn't know where he was, and it wasn't until I rewatched it today for the review that in the pre-title I just went, oh, there he is. He's the guy. Yeah, put your and they didn't dub him, which is nice too. You get to hear his actual voice. He's the guy. When he breaks in the pre-titles, he breaks into the place. Blofeld, go get him, and he puts the gun up. And then when Bond
I know who he is. He's
right.
Yeah,
and then when Bond throws
he's the guy
the
he
little,
gets the knife in his chest, right?
He gets like the three little scalpels.
Right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So he's good at that, and you get a nice good look at him. And again, he's not dubbed, so that's kind of cool. So yeah, I mean, the cast is terrific.
He's the guy that says, is he the guy that says, get your hands up?
Hold it! Get your hands up.
That guy.
Yes, I think so, yes. So let's talk about the pre-titles, because honestly, I feel like literally, and a lot of people will say that the pre-titles, at least up until a certain point, is really, really cool. To which I kind of go, I think it's cool in theory. Like, I like the idea of what they're doing here, but the execution leaves a lot to be desired. And I mean, honestly, literally the first frame. Like, I like how it opens up on a shot of the Japanese little paper wall. And then the first guy comes busting through the screen practically towards you. And I thought, that's cool. But then as he slides forward and hits his head on the wall, you could tell that they must have done that in reverse.
Yeah.
And and pulled him backwards, but just played the thing in reverse. So I'm like, okay, that looks awkward. And then Bond grabs him. I shan't ask you nicely. and talk about the worst dubbing.
Where is Blofeld?
Cairo!
Cairo, like what the heck? Like you couldn't make the guy say the words. So I already out of the gate, I'm just like, oh, this is so awkward. The kick of Connery, you see the foot just sort of fly up, and it's nowhere near the guy. It's just so weird. Then the whole hit me thing, and he turns him. I'm like, okay, again, in theory it's good, but the execution is so weird, So I kind of feel like. The clunkiness of this film is right there on display from the beginning.
It's like, Peter Hunt, where are you now?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I actually I guess part of this movie too for me is a bit of a nostalgia factor thing, because I saw it very early on, and also too we should back up just a second and talk about that he's kind of on this. It seems like he's out for vengeance here. And you could relate that to On Her Majesty's Secret Service with the comics there.
Yes.
But then you can also, it's sort of ambiguous. It doesn't have to be.
Yes.
Yeah, it's kind of.
Right, yes. It is. Right. And again.
Honestly, I think more of a sequel to On Her Majesty's Secret Service is actually License to Kill. But.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah.
That's more of a revenge thing, but anyway, yeah, I digress.
Right.
Yeah.
This is right. All the anger and revenge in that film should have been in this film.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's a great point, right? And it almost sort of highlights the frustration for me, because you go from a magnificent film like On Her Majesty's Secret Service to this, and I think I said something back when we did Goldfinger, and I said when you went from Russia with Love to Goldfinger, you sort of felt the jump forward in time a little bit.
Yeah.
This same thing, I feel like you literally went from one era to another,
it does feel like that. That I agree with. Yeah,
On Her Majesty's feels like an epic film from beginning to end, and then this feels like ABC's Friday Night at the Movies. Like a made-for-TV movie, schlocky. And you're right, that opening, the revenge opening. You're right. in a loose way, it's kind of for Tracy. At least they play it smart. Where if you remember that film, you might sort of pick up on that revenge angle. But if you don't know anything about it, it also works. It's just a guy, I'm looking for this other guy. We don't know why specifically. There's no direct mention to Tracy. So you're right. The ambiguity is probably smart.
Yeah.
On their part, but
yeah,
still mildly.
Because back in the day, you can't say, well, I'm going to start from Dr. No and watch them all in order. You couldn't do that. I mean, if it was, even before VHS, you had to what they were playing Diamonds Are Forever, okay, and you didn't really have that context of unless you saw it theatrically, or So when I saw it, I was just like, oh, okay, it's just another Bond movie,
Yeah. Right, yeah, and it does, and I still sort of do feel that they should stand more or less on their own. So I don't have much of a problem with the idea.
And I think also too, they stand on their own, and they also have a shift in tone. And this movie has a big shift in tone. It's more farcical. It's definitely almost satirical in certain ways. And not that they're super making fun of Bond, but it is kind of disciplined. Let me tell you something. I've seen some of the 60s spy films, which I really like, and some of them are kind of like, oh, isn't that kind of stupid? Like for example, like the R. Man Flint films or the End Like Flint. Those are fun to watch, but boy, they get very spoofy and just kind of goofy, And I don't think Diamonds ever gets overly goofy like that if you compare it to those films. But yeah, I get where you're coming from.
I don't know if I would agree with that. I feel like there are moments in this film that even Austin Powers could not achieve the same level of. I mean, again, sticking with the pre-titles. I mean, when he does when the guy's in the mud. And then the gun comes up slowly. First, I'm looking at the gun saying, would that thing work after being submerged in mud forever long? But he does that awkward cartwheel, hits the button, and, oh, it's more mud. More of the same thing that I'm laying in is falling on top of me. Oh, I mean, that to me is right out of The Naked Gun.
Wow. I don't have a problem. I mean, I get what you're saying, and it's funny, but personally, for me, I don't have a problem. The only thing I have a problem with that pre-title sequence, I think that when Charles Gray lunges at him as Blofeld, that's really awkward, and it just
from behind the table, like he's nowhere near him. He could never.
Everything else is reasonable. It's not great. It's not the greatest teaser. I mean, I like the opening, and I like him kicking ass, and I like. I do. We did skip over one thing, and I like his first introduction. His first, when they actually first show him.
Who are you?
My name is Bond. James Bond.
And he says, my name is Bond, James Bond. I think that's a really cool moment. And I like the way he interrogates that girl. That seemed very Bondian to me. It's like one of the last moments in the film where he's really, truly Bondian. I don't know. Maybe that's not true, but I like that moment.
No, yeah. Listen, I'll meet you halfway with that one. I kind of feel like I think the Bond James Bond is so plain and awkward, and what he's wearing is so weird.
Well, that's Plus, he's wearing. I do not
he's literally wearing.
I do not like the way Guy Hamilton
and he's wearing
flip
flops.
Yeah.
Well, right. He's wearing flip flops.
Yeah. You're not going to get
like
an argument.
I
hate when guys wear flip flops. I just don't like it.
I don't mind flip flops in general if I'm by the pool.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a time and place for flip flops. Yeah. I'll wear them. In fact, I'll even
on the beach. Let me tell you.
Well, I listen. I'm still one of those guys wearing the man sandals. I get that all the time. You like nice mandals. But I kind of feel for James Bond showing up and it's a close up on his bare foot. I just think that is really awkward. So when he shows up saying Bond James Bond, I kind of feel like just come over and say it. We're not going to really do anything interesting with angles or anything.
Because I think between that and then you got John Barry, and then he comes in a little bit with the James Bond theme, little Diamonds Are Forever James Bond theme. Yeah. I think it's really cool, and the whole quippy, there's something to get off your chest. I think that's really clever. And
that is good. Yes, that's a little rough. I do sort of agree with you there. But even when he says Bond James Bond, listen to that carefully.
Who are you?
My name is Bond. James Bond.
Because there's even the music in the background, because I've used it for clips. Like, there's the opening of these videos, by the way. The first the first note you hear is him saying Bond, James Bond from this movie, and you hear in the background this kind of a wah 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 kind of a music note behind it.
No, it's a
so
wah, wah,
even
wah,
that
wah.
is sort of weird. Like it's almost like John Barry knew that this whole movie is going to have like a very funny tone. And even the score, by the way, there are moments when the score is great, and there's other times when I'm listening to the score going, like, I think Barry knew what he was doing. The weird, and I could spend an hour just about this alone. The moon buggy chase.
Oh,
like,
I really
if you hear the
I
music,
really like that. It's interesting and different.
You like
I
it?
do. Oh, very much so. Yeah.
First of all, well, again, just to stick with John Barry for a second, the music behind that, it's almost like the whole orchestra went home, and he is like, oh, what do I got left? Well, I got the xylophone. Like the music behind it is so empty and odd.
It's definitely almost. I think 9 out of 10 composers would have done that completely different. He was trying something, and that's the only time for me that Barry made a misstep was that kazoo in Man with the Golden Gun when they did that car jump.
You're not thinking that.
I sure am, boy. Never heard of Evel Knievel.
Well, there
That's
you go.
the only time he ever made a
Right.
mistake, in my opinion. So, barking up the wrong tree.
and even he regretted that, so I'll give you that.
He did.
But honestly, like seriously, the moon buggy chase, he's undercover in the White headquarters, the science lab or whatever. And then as he's making his escape, somehow he shows up on the set of the moon, like almost like they're I to this day have no idea what that is.
I think it's
Are
supposed
they
to
trying
be like
to
it's supposed to be
imply
a moon simulation, like a zero gravity type of thing going on. That's what I got from it.
Well,
yeah.
Okay. First of all, why are they doing that here? Why are they? Well, okay. When he runs through? Why does the astronaut try to grab him and goes like this and can't? Like he's still in slow motion. Like he won't break character.
Well, he's in a zero gravity simulation. I'm guessing the suit is giving him the simulation. That's what I always kind of just assumed.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I actually just heard on one of my new favorite Bond podcasts, the Bond and Friends podcast, they were just talking about that, and somebody suggested that the suits could be filled with water to emulate. But I'm like, wait, wouldn't that just make you collapse from the weight of the water as opposed
I think
to?
if you're going into analyzing it, it's the.
Well, I am. That's
no,
what.
No, that's fine. But I think it's just supposed to be kind of like a breezy fun. It's not like. How can I say this? I know it's not James Bond not supposed to be a comedy, but this movie kind of happens to be one. So it's kind of like if I went into a Marx Brothers thing and I started analyzing the joke, or the slapstick. It's just kind of like, oh, okay, yeah. It's
So you're saying that Diamonds Are Forever is a good Bond movie because it's kind of like the Marx Brothers. It's a comedy.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying.
Like I said, listen, I said from the beginning, I think the people who defend it will say, look, it's just supposed to be light, breezy fun, and it's not meant to be more than that. And again, I have no problem with that in theory. It's just kind of not. And I do try to remind myself, like, I'm watching it kind of going back in time. And again, I didn't get into Bond until halfway through the Roger Moore era. Had I been, a Bond fan in the days of Connery and Automatic came and left, and then I sat down and watched this one, like, how would I react to it? And I'm saying to myself, even then I don't, like, again, looking back, like, okay, let's say I'm trying to take hindsight out of the equation, but even still, if I was there back then, what would I have thought of this?
Right.
Would this be if I'm a Bond fan at that time, is this what I want? And I'm saying, like, how would you? I don't see the answer being yes in any way. And by the way, just because I'm dying to make this point, when you watch that moon buggy chase, when he does bust out, and thank God he aims for the wall that happens to lead outdoors, when he's like literally he's driving the moon buggy, and all the other cars take off after him, and it's basically, all right, Bond, just drive straight, because if you wait long enough, they'll all just drive off cliffs, flip over for no reason. The cars will fall apart for no reason. Like literally, they'll just flip over, and then even the little dune buggies, the little 3-wheelers, they'll flip and fly all over the place. You just drive straight. They don't have to actually drive with any sense. They don't have to actually just drive behind you. They'll just drive all over the place.
I don't know if it's set up very well in the film or if it's shot very well, but I think the idea was, or the idea should be, that the moon buggy can kind of go into these great, these crazy little services and like these mountains and hilltops and kind of ride these bumps, without incident. And then when the cars, are in pursuit, they can't handle the terrain. So, I know, but it's not really shot very well, I don't know.
Scott, you are the best. You are.
I love when they go back the title song. I love the Shirley Bassey title song. I think it's really great. And the Maurice Bender. Maurice Bender, I'm a little indifferent to the titles. It's good and it's solid, but it's not like extraordinary. It's not like an eye popper like some of the other ones that he's done. But it's super solid. But when they go into the exposition, I really love the way the exposition is done on this, because they start talking about the diamond smuggling, and it's complete. They talk about how it's under an airtight security and everything, and then what they're showing you visually is like how it's not, and then they have like this whole scam going on with the dentist, and there's a guy in there with perfect white teeth, and I just think that is beautifully handled. I really like that, because I'm always in films. I'm always kind of like, I hate when they just sit down. I like character beats, and I like say like a Quentin Tarantino film where there's dialogue, but there's like it's enriching character. What I don't like when there's like super reams of dialogue giving you the plot. That makes me that's where I'm looking at my watch. But this is it's a good way about the diamond smuggling. I think that's very well done.
Yeah. I agree with you there, and I do like the idea that he's sort of saying one thing, but the layover is the B-roll is telling you something else. But I will say this: it took me a long time before I realized when the guy walks up and smiles, I'm trying to figure out I kept waiting to see like a diamond hidden in one of the teeth, and I couldn't see it. And then it took me a while to realize. I guess the point is that he's going to the dentist, even though he has really shiny white, nice teeth.
He's got diamonds in his mouth, but he's He doesn't need a dentist. Yeah, that's the joke.
Yeah, but even then, I kind of feel like that stuff is very awkwardly shot. But still, I like the idea of it, and I like that they made the effort to do that. So yes, I agree with you.
Creepy. I mean, Winston Kidd, I actually get a kick out of him. I know a lot of people don't. And there's there's silly things in there, like they put the scorpion down the guy's back, the doctor's back, or the dentist's back, and he dies instantly. It's just like, when I was a kid, I accepted that. I was like, oh, I guess if you get bit by a scorpion, that you're done. But it's it's just kind of like movie kind of death.
I've always had sort of a strange about Winston Kidd, because I mean the one played by Glover, Bruce Glover,
and Putter Smith.
He's right. I mean, he's weird and over the top, but Putter Smith, I look at him and I'm like, whose out of work uncle lost a job selling cars, and they brought him in to play this
magician. And they cast him, and they got him because they thought he looked a little weird, so that's why he got cast.
Well, he does. I always look at him and I'm like, that is the weirdest looking. Like, to me, that is a guy who's not like, the fact that you're telling me he's a jazz musician makes perfect sense. And you said that much better than I did. Like, his skill set would be.
You said that much better than I did. A musician.
Because he looks like his expertise would be elsewhere. Like, I'm saying to myself, this guy can't.
I think that those guys.
Again, he can't be an actor in the traditional sense.
But I think that those guys do the lines perfectly together. I mean, that they do just enough,
Even going back to the scene in the mortuary. See, and again, I didn't mind that too much. I thought the idea of that was pretty good. But then I remember I feel like every time I see it, again, my brain is trying to make some sort of sense out of what's happening. And I remember the guy, like, Bond goes in and he's talking to the guy who's the Undertaker or whatever. Oh, we're so sorry about your brother, Mr. Franks, yada, yada, yada. And I remember thinking, like, I'm not sure, why are they keeping this ruse up if They both know
Well-
who they are. They both know why
you
they're
know what?
there.
If we get back up for a second, because that you're right. You bring up something that's very interesting. It's kind of a story thing that doesn't work, but here it is. So he has a fight with Peter Franks in the elevator, and then he talks about, well, we should make Mr. Franks carry the load, from here on out, right? But they have this whole network, it seems, set up within that funeral parlor. So it's kind of like, wait a minute. It was Connery's idea to smuggle him in the body of Peter Franks, but they already have a whole setup in the funeral home? That was kind of odd, It'd be one thing.
Yes, all of the above. It's right. You see, it seems to be that Connery had that idea, yet it seems to be like it must have been the plan all along because, they're all set up in the funeral home. And by the way, getting back to Wynton Kidd, I never quite understood, like, they're in the funeral home. The Undertaker is there. Bond meets with him. Wynton Kidd hit him over the head.
Right.
Right? Then they put him in the thing. Then suddenly Shady Tree shows up back with the Undertaker again to yell at James Bond where he leaves. But then when Wynton Kidd meet Shady Tree later, they've never met before. So I'm like, wait a second. This tight little knit operation happening in the funeral home, you guys didn't even see each other?
Yeah.
Like I that to me was baffling. But let's dig a little deeper. So James Bond hides the diamonds inside the body of Peter Franks, okay? And he hides it where the sun doesn't shine. And it took me a long time before I understood that
Elementary Dr.
joke.
Leiter.
I give up. I know the diamonds are in the body, but where?
Elementary, Dr. Leiter.
Yeah. I heard a story about even Cubby Broccoli said no one's going to get that joke because that is really technical. Like nobody's like unless you're a doctor, you're not going to know what that is.
Many years.
Anyway.
Yeah.
You dirty double-crossing limey think those goddamn diamonds are phonies.
Where are the real diamonds?
You know, good double-crossing limey. All right, and then even later when they do it, they sort of do this thing again, this little cat and mouse, which is sort of interesting on its surface when they're trying to lead Tiffany Case through the casino, doing all the little funny things with the balloons and whatnot, and they give her the diamonds that way, I think.
Especially in that stuffed animal.
Right.
Yeah.
See, again, the whole thing is so baffling and confusing to me. They give her the diamonds, right? They go into that weird little fun house where the black lady turns into the gorilla, which I'm sure would fly totally today, by the way. And then she slips out the back door. Nobody thought to cover the doors. That Felix is saying, we got more men down there than who knows what. She slips out the back door.
A mouse with sneakers couldn't get through.
Right, yeah, but she did because she went out the back door instead of coming out back out the front door. Okay, she totally disappears.
She comes over, and I guess it's her place, and that's where they discover that Plenty is dead in the pool.
Yes,
and
yes.
that whole thing doesn't work either. That's kind of crazy storytelling, too. Because there is a scene where, it's in the deleted scenes in the Blu-ray, where Plenty sneaks back into the hotel room, and she's looking through Tiffany's stuff, and she finds her address. Yeah. Why she would go there, I have no idea.
In a million years, why would she go there?
I don't know.
Even if they had not cut that out, it would still be so wildly illogical.
So
but
that whole thing is weird. Granted.
Again, I feel like again, everything is so weird and convoluted and wrong in this movie. I feel like, all right, I'm done picking on it because what am I going to come up with? Anything good?
Well, you know what it is? I think. Yeah, no. As from a structure point, they're not going to be given lessons about Diamonds Are Forever in screenplay classes. That's definitely not. I actually like the Amsterdam scene. Oh, Mrs. Whistler. I love that whole thing with Mrs. Whistler. That's so creepy when they talk about, and then she comes in and they deliver the diamonds to her, and then they're lifting her dead body out of there, and they're like. Mrs. Whistler did want pictures for the the canals for the children.
Yeah, that is
kind of chilling in a weird way.
It is.
I think that's real, and I like the way that's like one of the few shots I really like because it shows them walking away, and then it pans over and shows Bond driving up. I think that's a really good transitional scene myself. But yeah,
I'll give you that.
And
I
love the introduction to Tiffany Case here. And I kind of got ready for like a kind of a kick-ass, female character here, because she's presented quite independent and kind of knows what she's doing. But the screenplay, and Jill St. John is great in the role. I think she's terrific in that opening scene. She's good throughout it, but I don't think the screenplay does her any favors later on because she's kind of, she seems a bit schizophrenic, and then she's sort of like
completely
kind of a damsel in distress kind of thing going on later, and it doesn't rinse, you know.
Yes, you're absolutely right on that, and I agree. It's funny because like. You're right. It's almost like I kind of feel like there's like 3 stages of Tiffany Case. Like some people will sort of say 2, but I kind of feel like it's 3 because you're right. When she comes in, she does seem very. I like the mystery, the air of mystery about her. Why she does the wigs, I'm not positive, but it's okay. She seems very smart, and almost right up until the point where they meet up again in the hotel, and that's a weird scene too, by the way. When he brings Plenty O'Toole upstairs, the goons come and throw her out the window. There's a tiny little scuffle, and then they just kind of silently back out because Tiffany is in the bedroom. So again, there's always this like kind of weird like who knows who. So the goons know Tiffany, and I'm like, I don't get why that would be, but fine. But even as Bond is talking to Tiffany, he says something like, so I'm the condemned man and whatever, and he says, I bet you're wondering this, and she's like, and she's kind of going, oh, very good, Mr. Franks, you're a little more than I expected. She seems smart and capable right up until that point. From that point forward, suddenly she's just kind of sassy. She's like this street chick, you know what I mean? Like with sassy comments to everybody, and I mean, and then again, that's where I'm grabbing my head, going, we went from the magnificent Tracy.
For thee the ships are drawn down to the waves. For thee the markets throng with myriad slaves.
Like this perfect Bond girl to
keep leaning on that tutor, Charlie, and you're gonna get a shot in the mouth.
Keep leaning on that tutor, Charlie, and you'll get a shot in the mouth. And I'm just like, oh wow, that's hard. And then like there's a lot of lines in here that just kind of go like really cockeyed to me. Like when she says when she does the balloon thing and the kid starts throwing a fit, and she goes,
blow up your pants.
What does that mean? Like, what does that mean?
I guess with the water gun? I don't know.
I have no clue what it means. But anyway, so then you get sassy Tiffany. Then she goes into full-blown damsel in distress. Like now she's Chrissy from Three's Company. She's just a total ditz.
Get the gun.
Here.
Shoot him!
And honestly, every time she says Ernst, my skin crawls. I'm like, are you serious? Hey, Ernst, what's going on? Ernst.
Tiffany, my dear, you're showing a bit more cheek than usual. And then he talks about how dumb she is. You know, if only there were brains. You know.
Yeah. Oh my god! Right?
Okay.
I mean, seriously, now she just goes for like just total ditz.
And one thing I could live without. One thing I never wanted to really see Charles Gray in drag. It's just not one of my. But it's not on my bucket list in life, you know.
Right. I mean, that's right. Like, I mean, at that point, this movie is just like we're gonna throw everything at you, including the kitchen sink, and whatever works, and what sticks, you know. That's just.
Let's talk about Charles Gray for a second.
Just a jump to the left.
Because I think he's a terrific actor. There's a movie he did in 1968 called The Devil Rides Out. And he plays the villain in that. The movie's about sort of a satanic cult. It's a little chilling, to be honest with you. Christopher Lee's in it, and he does a marvelous performance as well. But he plays the evil Makata in that movie, and he is terrific. And there's a sort of a Bond connection too, because in the novel, The Devil Rides Out, it was like the character that he's playing is sort of described as sort of like overweight and slovenly and everything. And it was originally going to be Gert Frobe in that role, but then it went to Charles Gray. And here, originally, Richard Maybaum worked on a script for Diamonds Are Forever, which had Auric Goldfinger's twin brother, which was going to be played by Gert Frobe.
Yes,
and they actually had one pretty funny line, you know, where he was going to say something like, my brother Auric. My mother always said he was retarded, or something like that. But they decided to go with Blofeld instead. I kind of like the Gert Frobe thing. Kind of intrigues me. I don't know if that would have. Right. The point I was trying to make about The Devil Rides Out is that he can do it. He can be a chilling, menacing villain, and I don't know if that comes off here. That's kind of the point I was making. You know.
Yeah, and yeah, I agree with that. I think that he's a very fascinating actor. He's got a very interesting look and a very good presence. Two things. I mean, honestly, to go from, I didn't understand. I mean, you just saw him as Mr. Henderson in You Only Live Twice, so you're kind of breaking the fourth wall by bringing him back in as a different actor, playing a different part. But as Blofeld again. Why, when we just had, I mean, they went to the trouble to get we had Donald Pleasance, we had Telly Savalas. Now he just has hair.
Well, they also do it like now he's sort of an upper class British guy, this snobby British guy.
Yes, like it's right. Totally totally different than what we had before. And I will say this: I thought that the whole plastic surgery opening shot, that I guess you could argue that that's why he looks different, but it doesn't matter because Bond seems to recognize him right away.
Yeah.
So again, it's almost like this is the trouble they should have went to for Honor Majesties to explain why they don't recognize each other.
I tried that already. I tried Japanese, and then everybody still knew who I was. So I'm not fooled by it. I hadn't put this together, but Norman Burton plays Felix Leiter, which, probably the miscast of miscasts here, maybe. I don't know. But he's done some cool roles. He was in the original Planet of the Apes from 1968, and he's the first ape that Charlton Heston lays eyes on. He's the guy. He's the gorilla and horseback there. So pretty cool.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, I didn't know that.
Hello, Felix. Well, you know it. Willard White is about to be executed, and guess who's giving breaststroke lessons?
Yeah, he's a funny Felix Leiter, and again, I've sort of argued like he's probably the lamest, but again, Connery is now getting up there. He's getting a little soggy, so you can't let Felix Leiter upstage him. So the Felix Leiter has to get older and soggier.
I think Connery actually looks better in Never Say Never Again than he does here in this film. It's weird. I don't know.
It is weird. I mean, honestly,
it's like 12 years later.
Is 19. Yeah, I mean, this is 9 years after Dr. No. And I guess anybody's going to age reasonably significantly in 9 years. And plus, we haven't seen him in 4 years since You Only Live Twice. But it does seem like a kind of a leap forward. I remember thinking as I watched it recently that he didn't look as bad as I remembered. I kind of feel like over the years, I remember thinking like he just looks awful in this compared to the other ones. Now that maybe because I'm getting older, a little saggier, I'm sort of feeling like, he doesn't look nearly as bad as I thought he did. But, I mean, it is a pretty significant difference. And plus, I think one of the frustrations about this film, too, is that they're sort of embracing, as opposed to the classic look of, I mean, Bond always sort of kept classic. Like, he looked like he was out of the 50s, even throughout the 60s. The classic gray suits all went out the window. Now we've got these bright pink ties and these really weird outfits on Connery. And plus the bad guys some of these guys, the mutton chops on these guys are just so distracting. Like these big giant sideburns that come halfway around their face. I just find it to be so weird. And talk about dating the film. How about the big climax on the oil tanker?
You stupid idiot, you're gonna kill me. Disengage.
Yeah, that's kind of a stinker. Even Ken Adam can't save that. I mean, there's not much going on, and
again, watching it again, I'm watching like he comes in with the tape, and Blofeld says, "Oh, I guess you plan to slip this for the real tape, I guess." Ha. And okay, and I'm like, and I kind of like that because I thought like I liked that he sort of telegraphed Bond's plan a little bit, but then Bond actually switches it. Then Tiffany switches it back. Then the balloon goes up, and they go, "Oh, I think that means Bond accomplished his mission. We should go attack." But he didn't accomplish the mission. She undid it. There's never a shot where he puts he switches it a third time.
You stupid twit! You put the real one back in.
I did it. I switched the tape in the machine.
You stupid twit! You put the real one back in.
Come on, let's go.
Right, but they just come in and start shooting the place up anyway.
I don't know. Yeah.
No, that is. I have no problem with that per se. But again, they go, "Oh, he must have accomplished the mission. Now let's start shooting." So they start blowing the place up, and they just blow it up. And I guess that solves everything.
They actually
so
had
what's Bond doing there anyway? Why is Bond even there? They should have just gone with helicopters and started shooting.
Again, I think that climax is sort of a victim of its own budget and time constraints. They actually had some very elaborate scenes planned that they just, said, no, we're just going to end it. Because there's a whole thing with that, like that whole thing with the sub and everything. And there's going to be this chase on Lake Mead, and it was supposed to be this spectacular thing.
Right.
And it just, no.
Right.
Just kinda,
the whole sub that just like,
and true.
The whole sub where you just clunk them around for a little while. I'm going to knock them around a couple times.
Damn you! Come on, Santa, come in.
And after
what are you doing? Stop! Damn you! And that supposedly takes out Blofeld. I think, I don't know.
Yeah. They never
really.
And after the hollowed out volcano and Piz Glory, which was spectacular, that this oil rig is kind of like
Right. It's like what you're
it's
right.
It's kind of like the movie's like, hey, look, man, we got Connery back. It cost us a fortune. All right. So
big time.
On the production value, we're gonna have to scale back a bit.
Yeah.
It's kind of
those,
like you want it, but
especially those special effects.
Yeah. Yeah, some of the things like the helicopters exploding and stuff like that. Yeah, not so hot. Yeah, not good.
That every when the laser. The shot of the laser shooting down at the Earth. Boy, does that. I could have done better than that in like just paper and moving things. Like, oh my God, it's just awful. Like the shot of them blowing up the Chinese base.
We didn't talk about Bambi and Thumper yet, really.
I'm Bambi.
Good morning, Bambi.
And I'm Thumper. Is there something we can do for you?
Well, like you said, it's meant to be fun. The two, Bambi and Thumper. Again, I will say this: I like the choice of the actresses they put in, because the girl who plays Bambi, she was a trained gymnast. And Thumper, Trina Parks, she was a dancer. So you can sort of see in the dynamic of how they move where that sort of all fell into play. So I do like the fun choreography of that scene, and I just like this kind of idea of it. Again, does it lend itself to reality in any way, shape, or form? No. And then, like you said, then they end up in the pool, and for some reason, after Connery's been getting clobbered the whole time, he just dunks their heads down, and that's all it takes, I guess. He's a better swimmer. I don't know. But yeah, that is a lot of fun.
And in the epilogue here, with the Winton kid, you got to give Putter Smith credit, man. They actually lit him on fire, man.
Is that right?
Yeah, and that's like, that's no joke.
Listen, I will hand it to him for that, yes. But honestly, that epilogue, boy, is that to me, you want to talk about now we're in full-blown Austin Powers territory?
Oh, lovely, Austin.
Right over there is fine, thank you.
Let's go out on the terrace. It's a beautiful night. We can look at the stars.
Smashing idea, man. Yeah. Look
out!
That really hurt.
The set looks cheap. It's just so weirdly done, awkward. It's not even, again, like you just sort of at that point, if you haven't made peace with the idea that this movie is meant to just be silly and fun, then I guess you're out of luck, because that scene just, oh boy, like even just the shot of her going, Zzz. Again, if this is not meant to be a comedy, I don't know what this is.
Right. I can see this as shock value. After Under Majesty's Secret Service and loving it so much, and then doing this one, I could see where you could just be like, "What happened? The bottom just fall out? Holy mackerel! Did we jump the shark?"
Right, and yes, and that's probably a great way to sort of sum it up, because I kind of feel like, especially that the two of these happen to be right next to each other in the chronology. If you are a fan of Honor Majesty's, this thing is the polar opposite. It is literally the polar opposite. So I don't know how you would sort of watch these two side by side and kind of go, oh, they're both good. Like, they're so opposite from each other.
Well, I'll tell you something. The consensus was back in the day pretty much was that this, Connery was back. This is one of the good ones. Yeah. And, mission accomplished. Made a ton of money. Made a lot more than Majesty. And, well, there you have it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes, and time has shown. Like you said last week, I'm glad that time has been kind to Majesty. I'll just say that.
Absolutely. I just
and
I think you hit it on the head though. I think it's fun, but it's not fun for everybody. Let's put it that way. And for me, this movie's kind of fun. I mean, yeah, you could dive deep into this and just tear apart that screenplay and just like, throw it back in McKendrick's face, if you wanted to. But God rest his soul.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yes.
I mean, it's not one I reach for all the time. I'd definitely go for my holy six, Connery Bonds that I love. But I do like this one. And
again, I will say this, like to what you said about the screenplay. I believe Mankiewicz did the next three. I think he did this one and the two following.
This is the beginning of the Mankiewicz trilogy.
Exactly right, and I think that again, anybody who wants to blame Roger Moore for the kind of silliness of those early films, well, look at this one again. It did not start with Roger Moore.
No, the tone.
And I think we said last time
this definitely
too.
set the tone for at least the next few films.
Yeah, and I remember talking last time about Lazenby kind of struggling with the idea, is Bond dead? I submit Diamonds Are Forever. That again, like I said last week, he wasn't totally wrong. That it was a dramatic course change, because I think the filmmakers were struggling to figure out what audiences were looking for. So again, this is an era that just sort of gets bizarre. I mean, basically now, last when we talked about Honor Majesty, that was sort of the end of the golden age of Bond, and now we're getting into this sort of weird middle area where I just think they're struggling to figure out what audiences are looking for. And they're trying to keep everybody happy the best they can, but times are changing. But again, I will say, and I'll, this is sort of how I'll kind of try to bring it all to a close. If you told me that Diamonds was playing in the theater down the street doing a revival, I'd be there in a heartbeat with everybody else, laughing and kind of heckling and throwing popcorn at the screen, but loving every minute of it. So again, again, as much as I goof on this as being the weakest of all the Bond films, it's always fun and it's good for a chuckle.
Do you really think it's the worst of the Bond films, in your opinion?
I think if I do. I do. I think it's got to be. And I know that there are other ones that will come
I'd
later.
rather sit through this than like some of the run, jump, and shoot Brosnan ones that they did later. Some of them. I mean, some of them I love, but yeah.
I would agree with that, but again, I think at the end of the day, and I'll tell you what, I'll even compare this to A View to a Kill. A View to a Kill is sort of meant to be silly and goofy, and it's got screenplay problems galore. But honestly, I kind of feel like that's sort of an example where at least the jokes work.
Really?
Here I kind of feel like it's just sort of silly just to be silly.
Because I think a lot of times in View to Kill, I think that's one of its problems. Some of the jokes work in View to a Kill. Well, we're getting off the thing. But yeah, I feel like that one, it doesn't quite click. I know, for some reason. Yeah.
So I feel like that one is much tighter. Like, it and again,
you might be right about that.
Not to telegraph our punches, but
tighter, but it's not as fun for some reason.
See, I feel like I think Walken is a better villain. I think
it's an actor. I like Walken as an actor, but I think he's like missed it by one Bond. He would have been much better with Dalton. I think he just would have made sense. But yeah,
maybe. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, the bottom line is I feel like Diamonds compared to some of these other ones, it's it's not. Is it the worst offender? Well, again, I just sort of feel like it's kind of a wine that, like, there are some wines that are tight, there are some that are well balanced, and there's some that are flabby. This one, I think, is one that is just flabby, where it's so much is thrown at it. I mean, I feel like every single scene, there are even shots in this movie that I feel like are like there's parts of the frame or that are just not even in focus. I mean, there's the shot where, the guy says, "I got a brother." Like, the guy's face is not even lit and it's not even in focus. like I said, I think they don't know what they want to do with this film, so they're just going to sort of try everything and everything.
I think
they throw everything at it.
I think everything was kind of like, ready or not, here we come. I think that, I don't know exactly how it went down, but I think Connery was like, okay, I'll do it, and here I am. And he's probably like saying, this is the time period I'm going to do it, and that's it. It doesn't matter. Script is ready. If the sets are ready, doesn't matter. We're going. I think I'm not speculating on that, but I have a feeling that that's what kind of happened here. I don't know. Yeah,
and I don't disagree with any of that. Yeah, that's true. Seriously, you have a shot of James Bond breaking into Willard White's office and landing on the John, and I'm saying to myself, this has to be the weirdest Bond film ever. The weirdest Bond film by a long shot.
It is, in a weird way. It kind of made me why I like it so much. I don't know. There's some things I really like about this movie. It's kind of neat to have one last little Eon James Bond with Sean Connery. I know, I know it's not everybody's favorite, but there's certain things I like. Like I love that Amsterdam stuff, and I love the beginning, the exposition, the way they talk about the diamond smuggling, and I kind of like, unfortunately, it goes for the big guns, but I like the idea that it kind of started small. I kind of wish they had just stuck with the diamond smuggling. It doesn't have to be, life or death, world at stakes going on, but overall, I'd say, I love that elevator fight, and I do really like the John Barry score. It's probably not up to the majesty of You Only Live Twice or On Her Majesty's Secret Service, but it's a really good score. And I really came to love the score from when they did the expansion back in the early 2000s. Because as it was represented on LP, it was kind of mostly just the Vegas lounge music, which was fine, but it's kind of missing some of the juicy cues, like the elevator fight action stuff, So I'm going to rate this a 7. I had a good time with it. It's vintage Bond. It's got Connery. It's got John Barry. It's got some script problems. It's probably got some miscasting as well, in the Blofeld and Lighter Range. But for some reason, and of course, it's got Bambi and Thumper. So it kind of evens out a little bit. It's not as good as what has preceded it, but it's enjoyable.
So for me, I mean, again, and I want to clarify again, like the way I do my score is like, and I'm curious to see when we get to the ones that I know that you don't like how you're going to score those. I feel like you're like even your least favorite, you're going to go, it gets an A for effort, so I'm going to give it a whatever. But again, my least favorite gets a 1. This is my least favorite. It gets a 1. Does it mean that I hate it? No, I don't hate it. I just feel like as far as effectiveness in terms of what I want to see in a James Bond film, it really has none of those things. It's got some chuckles here and there. It's very notable for a lot of things. There are some lines, some one-liners that are worth remembering. I like when he says, as long as the collars match the cuffs, it's a little off, So again, it's not a terrible movie, and I do like the supporting cast. I think the cast is great, and they are there to have a good time with it, and they certainly do. But yes, I mean, it's if this is not the weirdest, goofiest James Bond film that's ever been, I don't know what is.
I would say, I'm gonna have to say, I'm gonna say it. I think Charles Gray as Blofeld.
Just a jump to the left.
I hate to say that because I really like Charles Gray as an actor, but it's like another Blofeld miscast, and he's good with his lines and he's good with the quippy dialogue. And if he was playing any other villain other than Blofeld, I'd be fine with him. But he's just not Blofeld.
It's almost like kind of a cop out, I feel like. But honestly, I'm just going to give it to the special effects because I feel like the effects are just so awful. Like, I mean, I even Dr. No had better special effects. Again, if you don't have the budget to execute certain things, then just don't do it. Like, did we need the shots of the Chinese base blowing up when it looks so terrible? Did we need the submarine? Like, I remember thinking, like, when they blow up the Russian sub, which was, I guess, was supposed to be a Russian sub, you would think that they would cut to an interior to sort of explain what that is, but they don't. Again, budget constraints, I'm sure. But why even do it? Just say that the threat is there. Like, you didn't have to have things blowing up in On Her Majesty's. You didn't have to have things blowing up in Thunderball. The threat was there. So if you I don't see why those scenes are in there when they just look as ridiculous as they do.
It's either one or two. I really like that elevator scene, that elevator fight scene, and I also like the Bambi and Thumper thing. I'm going to go with the elevator scene, though. I think that one is like this looks like more time was put into that. It's sort of almost like, a throwback to like what they were just been doing with Peter Hunt, with these, close quarters fighting. It's not as good as a lot of those fight scenes in the earlier films, but it tries. And it's got even John Barry in there pitching in to help out the scene. I just think it's really a lot of fun.
This is gonna. No, I'm not. That. I was gonna say the part where he's hanging outside with the pitons, but
how about the end credits?
Yeah, the end credits. You know what I'm gonna go with? I'm gonna go with the women of the film. I'm gonna go with Jill St. John as Tiffany Case. I think, even though again the screenplay doesn't really serve her very well, I think she's great, and I think she is a nice. She's a great attribute for the Bond franchise in general because she speaks very highly of playing this part. Bambi and Thumper, a great little scene, a great dynamic. Again, the fact that they were smart enough to have a gymnast and a dancer do that part, and you can sort of see it in the fluidity of their movements. One is blunt, one is very cat-like, and I'm going to give it to Lana Wood as Plenty O'Toole. I mean, she's terrific in it. And she's another friend to the Bond community. She really has been, she's very accessible, very sweet, and she loves having been part of this film and being part of James Bond. So I will hand it to the female supporting cast in that respect. So Diamonds Are Forever. I think as much as, again, I thought, like we said last week, I thought it was going to be, like you said, Billy Bats getting a beating at 3 o'clock in the morning in the nightclub. Right. I thought this was actually pretty civilized, frankly.
It was, yeah.
Yeah, and again, this was a nice little point-counterpoint. You offset my curmudgeon-ness of this film. So it worked out pretty good.
Or everybody's like saying, no, that guy likes everything.
There you go.
But I got to say something. You handled this vlog like a monkey handles coconuts.
You handle those cubes like a monkey handles coconuts.
Perfect. I love it. That's a perfect way to end this up.
All right, man.
All right, partner. Then that's it for this one. And being James Bond reviews, the countdown to Bond 25 will return.
James Bond.